This is quite a complicated issue, so I'll go through it bit by bit so everyone knows where they are. In normal circumstances on an application, it is 9 minutes total for all of the speakers that come to committee, however many there are. But in this instance, it's my decision to make. I've decided that we will have 45 minutes total for all of the speakers. And that is going to be split, obviously, 15 minutes between each group of speakers. How I intend to do this is to do it in a tier, because we obviously don't want all the speakers sitting together and keep in the front, whether they want to or not. So what I intend to do, if I may, is I'm going to call the parish council speakers first, and as I believe the clerk of the Callow and Haywood Group Parish Council is Gulliver, and then we have Mrs. Trevor from Leon, the Parish Council. I've seen them before, I think they know the form. So whenever you are ready, Mr. Brown will sort you out with your microphones and all the rest of it. You can share these times as you wish. When I come to 15 minutes, I'll stop you. If you finish before, well, makes it easy short. But whatever you wish. Can I just mention two members of the public? People keep quiet, so I can then do it. If you feel that you need to make some comment, do some applause or whatever, I would advise you not to, because it spoils the speaker's time. But it may have difficulty finishing their speech or do something. So really it's better just to keep quiet, listen to the speakers, and then we can move along. So whoever wants to start, whenever you're ready, thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Sophie Lowe, and I'm the honour of being the chairman of Callow Haywood Parish Council. SC2 will physically split the parish in two and has caused much emotional turmoil amongst parishioners. We, the Parish Council, feel that our job is to be the voice of our parishioners and to make a fair representation of their views. We're told that there's been a lack of clear and consistent consultation with those affected. There's been a lack of communication received to keep people directly affected informed of changes and developments in the proposal. An example of this is of a parishioner whose land was split in two by the proposed road, who had not been contacted at all and was actually turned away from the Three Counties Hotel meeting because they were not on the list. Due process appears not to have been followed in route selection. For example, we're aware that at least one report generated by Parsons Finkelhoff was not accurate, the woodland survey. Decisions have been made that were contrary to guidelines, and not enough consideration has been given to minimise the impact on the ancient woodland at Scarfton Wood. Mitigation has been declared and a new woodland will be planted. We understand, however, that this is to be planted on the soil from the construction of the road, which we understand is far from ideal soil for the young trees to thrive, and will be new woodland really replace an ancient one. Callow and Haywood Parish Neighbourhood Plan opens with a description of the parish, which is as follows. Despite its close relationship with Hereford City, this group of parishes is a green and pleasant land. It serves as an important natural counterpart to its urban neighbour and boasts mature and ancient woodland, hidden valleys and wildlife havens. The landscape is soft and rolling agricultural land, interspersed with small groups of houses and farms, and it's a special feature acting as a setting to distant, far-reaching views of the Welsh Mountains, the Malvern Hills and Iron Age forts. Our neighbourhood plan aims to protect and enhance these important qualities whilst enriching the lives of the local community. There's a recognition that change will happen, but change should be managed carefully to ensure that the parish continues to prosper and the valued aspects are preserved where possible. We would hate for this road to have a negative impact on this and future generations. Information provided by Herefordshire Council over the years on the comparative costing of the various route options has been misleading, inconsistent and unreliable. We found it extremely difficult to ascertain from the Council the current budget for building SC2, to the point that one parishioner found it necessary to make a request under the EU Regulation 5.2 of the Environment Information Regulation 2004 for up-to-date costs for this and other rejected routes. The advice received was that all route costings published in 2014 were based on AIM's 2012 estimates, to which contingency allowance had been added. However, it was confirmed that the costs had not been adjusted upwards since 2014 to allow for significant changes to SC2 introduced in January 2015, including increased span of the rail bridge structure, the inclusion of 2 embanked backed bridges, culverts and watercourses, etc. Although the purpose of this meeting today is to consider a planning application for SC2, how are the members of the council to judge one route against another one and the obvious basic criterion of comparative cost? Indeed, how is the public to know the true current cost estimate of SC2? Our lanes currently have a very high volume of traffic, not just cars but also many HGVs. The volume and size of traffic causes much damage to the road surface, bricks and gullies as they try to pass other vehicles and are a danger to anyone foolish enough to want to walk, bicycle or ride through our mutual approach. Route SC2 failed to remove the back line along Hereford Lane, Callow and Lockhaven. This was the stated aim of the proposed route and was additionally a neighbourhood plan objective. The proposed A465 roundabout is situated too far to the southwest, and drivers from Belmont trying to reach the A49 are unlikely to travel a further 1.3 kilometres to access SC2 and will most likely continue to use Hereford Lane. We feel that as a parish council it is not our job to make a decision on this road, that is your job, but we do have to be the voice of our parishioners, and the overall overwhelming view is of non-consultation and disinformation. At a vote on 7th of July 2015, the Callow and Hereford Parish Council voted very clearly, 4 votes in favour and 2 abstentions, that the route SC2 should be refused. This decision was passed to the planning department as an objection by the parish council. We therefore request that the will of these parishes be reflected in the planning committee's decision. Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Carol Potter from Tionga Parish Council. You might think Tionga would welcome the Southern Link Road with open arms in anticipation of reduction of journey time into Hereford. However, from information provided by the Council and Parson Bruegel, we know that there will be no real benefits to traffic problems coming into Hereford from south-southwest. The volume of traffic going over Grey Grass Bridge will remain unaltered. Small reductions in traffic, 9 to 13%, on the A465 out of the Tesco stretch, are countered with a 15% increase on the A49 from Asda to Home Lacey Road. Traffic jams, congestion, pollution and noise will simply shift from Belmont Road to annoy and upset residents and travellers on the Ross Road, about as much help as moving the washing up to a different draining board. The reason, the bulk of traffic, as statistics have repeatedly shown, is not heavy freight travelling through town, but it's going to a destination in Hereford City. Only 15 to 20% of traffic entering Hereford is through traffic. The remaining 80 to 85% is destined for Hereford itself and unlikely to divert to the Southern Link Road. It is largely local people going about their daily business, which peaks at commuting hours. At quieter times, central Hereford can be accessed by car within 15 minutes from Tionga, hardly onerous. We in the Golden Valley know that even rush hours are a completely different experience in school holidays. Herefordshire Council's own figures bear this out. 2010 traffic data shows that outside term time, morning peak flows decreased by a minimum of 23%, a maximum of 52% across the city along the road, it's 27%. Measures to address transport to schools and colleges in Hereford would result in traffic and health benefits. The majority of journeys within Hereford are short. 50% of the peak periods are less than 2 miles long. A rational approach, better value for money, would be to reduce car traffic for these short distance trips by sustainable transport measures first, including investing in solutions to school transport and infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists. The proposed Southern Link Road, containing no provision for cyclists or pedestrians, will encourage greater car dependency. In our parish, active travel is discouraged by the fast-moving heavy traffic along country roads. Safer routes for cyclists and pedestrians are needed. As it is, with reduced bus services and increasingly dangerous roads, we are in danger of becoming car-dependent prisoners in our own community. We know that the National Travel Service showed nearly 1/3 of those aged 70 or more have no access to a car, and 50% of people aged 17 to 21 years old do not drive. The SLR discriminates against people who have no access to a car, especially older, younger and economically deprived people. They're only building for cars and not addressing sustainable active travel and public transport. Failure to implement and evaluate complementary and sustainable transport measures before building new road infrastructure is also contrary to Highways Agency guidance and National Planning Policy Framework. The SLR does not stand alone. There are some unanswered questions about links with the local road network on the southwest. For instance, much has been made of the potential benefit it would provide for heavy goods traffic to and from Wales along the A49 increased use to access the Southern Link Road. Meanwhile, minor rural roads are damaged, repaired and damaged again by increased uses. Barclay Beatty has stated that 70 million is needed to repair them, barely touched by the annual budget of 1.5 million. The 27 million plus anticipated expenditure on the Southern Link Road could be better spent. Moving on to the part of the plans which most directly affect our parish, the consultation process has been deeply flawed throughout, including restriction of access for local residents to a meeting, and it was most apparent in the sudden addition of the pt1 link, arbitrarily added without proper local consultation at a late stage. Its route poorly indicated on information material, no cost-benefit analysis or indeed costing or traffic analysis impact assessment. This unnecessary link is totally opposed by the Parish Council. The Parish Council was horrified to learn of the situation at Pikeville, where a retired couple living in a house of their dreams, earned by hard work throughout their life, woke up one day to find that the pt1 link was going through the bottom of their garden, decimating their beautiful old oak trees. If there had been proper consultation, I'm sure the majority of our village would not wish this on one of their neighbours. This whole situation has been seriously mishandled. Lack of clarity on consultation maps, lack of early communication with the solicitors, and initial denial of the land belonging to them, followed by complete refusal to amend to a less damaging route. For Mr. and Mrs. Harris, the stress, expense and impact on health has been enormous. The loss of 300-year-old Parkgate oak tree could not be mitigated as a feature of landscape of significant habitat. Attempts have been made to downplay the value of this tree, but the Council's own Environment Officer's report states that he cannot support the removal of this tree given the loss of biodiversity value and wants the route to be worked to ensure its retention. Overall, the SLR has serious adverse environmental impacts. The plans to mitigate the loss of nature would by definition be irreplaceable at with a large level, relying on the use of compact and contaminated sites. Over this, throughout all surveys, parcels make up seriously underestimated the likely significant adverse effects from the scheme, as objections with specific local knowledge of the proposed route have pointed out. The ecological appraisal was unforgivably minimal, conducted inappropriately only in the autumn, missing out not only bluebells but the recently discovered two very rare plants, which in other parts of the country have been given protection by SLR designation. Does the planning committee want to be responsible for their destruction? Over 30 hectares of the best and most versatile agricultural land, and a resource our island cannot afford to lose, will be destroyed. Heritage assets will be damaged, landscapes marred by visual impact, light, noise and pollution, including pollution to the west end of the city from the prevailing wind, affecting not only residents but also tourists and city residents seeking easy access to the countryside. The committee report confirms that the multiple adverse environmental impacts of the SLR conflict with both local policies in the development plan and national policies set out in the NPPF. The perceived unproven benefits do not justify the damage to our countryside assets and the frequent urbanisation of a beautiful biodiverse area. And the officer reminds you in her report, this planning application should be considered on its own merits, which implies leaving aside the Council's pie-in-the-sky claims concerning the potential for jobs and housing from later development of the Western River crossing, or unspecified benefits as yet unfinalised or detail from the active travel measures in the South Wye Transport Package. The SLR has no significant economic benefits of outright its multiple diverse impacts, and on its own will not address congestion in Hereford City. It does not get people out of their cars onto buses and bikes, nor make the enterprise own magnet driven with investment in new jobs. It is portrayed as the first class of bypass which when complete might bring economic gains, but there is no certainty that the rest of the bypass will be permitted or funded, so the committee must put aside benefits claimed for the bypass and decide on the SLR application today. The Southern Link Road demonstrably does not constitute sustainable development and the application should be refused. The Herefordshire Council calls upon you as councillors, as fellow residents of this beautiful county and its custodians for future generations, to refuse the admission for the Southern Link Road and to use earmark funds on infrastructure for public transport, cycling, pedestrian routes and school transport for the benefit of the environment, the health of our citizens and to avoid irreparable damage to tourism, agriculture and the enjoyment of this rural county for all.
sit down and then we'll move on to the group of objectors that we have with us today. So, just make some explanations if I may. The objectors, a maximum of 15 minutes is set aside for objectors. Any one objector may speak up to 3 minutes and allocate a portion of their 3 minutes to others as they see fit. No objector may speak for more than 3 minutes. On top of that, I've made an exception at my discretion for Mrs. Harris to speak. She will get a further 3 minutes on top of that because she is, or their family, they are directly affected by this application. That is my decision, and so I will give you all the names of the people who are going to come and sit down, if you wouldn't mind. We start off with Mr. Priddle, who's a local resident. We have Mrs. Morbietska, and then we have Mr. Palgrove and Mr. Perkins. Let me just explain about those 3 people. They have asked if Amanda Martin from the Hereford Transport Forum can join them and use some of their time. So if she, I'm not sure where she is, if she would like to come and see how we're going to get on, that gives you 6 minutes, so I'm sure you can do the maths on that. Mr. Elliott, who is a local resident. There he comes, yeah. Mr. Thompson from Mr. Watkins, who's a local resident. And the aforementioned Mrs. Harris. There should be enough seats for you all there somewhere. If you could all sit yourselves down. And if the gentleman who does the photography wants a picture of himself, we can sort that out as well. Right, so I just want to, before we get to start speaking, thank you once again, Mr. Bill, for your this morning for allowing us to come and have a look. Thank you. So, I think it's down to you, Mr. Brown, for a push back to his timing device, and then we'll get going. Whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Can you hear me? I am Anthony Brittle. I'm an architect with additional qualifications in planning, law and system. I live at the listed Haywood Lodge, which is affected by the proposed route SC2. But I'm also someone who moved here specifically to enjoy the Herefordshire countryside. I'm not a no-roader. I believe a link from the A465 to the A49 is necessary, but SC2 is the wrong route selection. We will hear from the Enterprise Zone Board that the SLR needs to be constructed, but for them, any of the route options would suffice. It doesn't have to be SC2, which is a badly designed route. The applicant failed to take account of the following custodian duties when making the route selection. Firstly, heritage. The council has a duty to protect the setting of Haywood Lodge, which is Grade 2 star, which is of national heritage importance. This is not only written into national and county legislation, but it is writ big in European law under Directive 2014-52. Also, see the reports from your Conservation Officer and Historic England that the setting of Haywood Lodge will be seriously damaged by SC2. They recommend refusal. In 2016, very recently, a High Court judge in a judicial review concluded that, and I quote, "It was wrong to give weight to public benefit over the protection of heritage assets." The second item is landscape. The county has a duty to protect the landscape as defined in the core strategy and in our neighbourhood plan. The design of SC2 is particularly damaging as it fails to follow natural contours. At least 23% is below ground in countries and over 50% above ground on embankments. This will spread light and noise pollution for miles. Other options follow natural contours much better. The third item is biodiversity, which has been mentioned by other people, and SC2 will decimate Grafton Wood. So route SC2 was chosen prematurely, and the applicant failed throughout to follow due process by carrying out proper research before narrowing the route options. This brutal, insensitive road design, this planning application should be refused to avoid a public inquiry or judicial review and the associated further delay and cost. Revisiting the options can be undertaken very quickly with new enthusiasm and with the benefit of the lessons learned from this unfortunate, fundamentally flawed planning application.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll go to our four mentioned people before. I'll just say again, Mrs. Morawiecka, Mr. Palgrave, Mr. Perkins and Amanda Martin. I don't know your other name, I'm afraid, but there we go. You have 6 minutes between you, so whenever you're all ready. Thank you.
The application today is for a standalone road project. The Cabinet Member for Infrastructure had assured the General Overview Scrutiny meeting in December 2014 that details of the potential sustainable transport measures would form part of the planning application. 18 months later, this application is purely for a road. There is no money for anything else. 3 months ago, Herefordshire Council cut the Southwide transport budget from 35.6 million to 27 million, despite adding the Cleon the Link Road to the scheme. With no sustainable transport measures, this road is contrary to the Council's local transport policy HN1. HN1 gives a clear hierarchy of 5 steps to follow in tackling congestion and only considers building new roads if the first 4 steps fail. Approval of SLR today would be a massive U-turn by all those councillors who approved the local transport policy just 10 days ago. The council's consultants state the SLR will increase traffic on the A49, worsening access to Rotherham, increases car use and emissions, reduces walking and cycling. By absorbing the entire Southwide budget, this road prevents delivery of sustainable transport measures in the area. The benefits of this standalone road project do not exist. Under case law, national and local planning policies, if the benefits of the Southern Link Road do not outweigh the significant permanent damage to environmental and heritage assets, this committee has to refuse this application.
Thank you. A determination today based on the officer's report is potentially unsound. A key material consideration has not been reported on adequately, and so you cannot decide how much weight to give it. The MPPF is a material consideration. At paragraph 17, it says development must support the transition to a low-carbon future in a changing climate. At paragraph 95, it says that local planning authorities should plan for new development in locations and ways which reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Local plans and material considerations. Policy SS7 requires measures that will mitigate climate change. The local transport plan says we should reduce congestion and increase accessibility by less polluting and healthier forms of transport than private car. Neither the environmental statements nor the officer report present any considered assessment or conclusions on the climate change impacts of the SLR. They do not mention the MPPF policies on climate change. This is a very concerning omission given the seriousness of climate change and the fact that Parsons Brinkhoff have suggested in a very cursory comment that greenhouse gas emissions will rise if the road is built. They said all schemes will have a slight adverse impact on greenhouse gases due to vehicles travelling greater distances and at higher speeds. The report is completely silent on the question of greenhouse gas emissions from construction and use of materials in building the road. As a result, it is impossible to estimate the full carbon footprint of the proposal. There is no meaningful assessment of the impacts of the SLR on climate change. All we know is that usage of the road is expected to lead to some unspecified increases in greenhouse gas emissions. You cannot give such a vague observation proper weight in reaching a decision today. You cannot be clear if the road is compliant with the MPPF core principle, which says development must support the transition to a low-carbon future in a changing climate. For a development as large as this, it is very regrettable that so little effort has been made to establish its effect on climate, and I contend that permitting the application today cannot be considered sound and would leave the Council open to complaint or judicial review.
And in the context of what you've just heard, Public Health England just recently released advice to local authorities in promoting active travel on the 16th of May. They suggest that while motorised road transport has a role in supporting the economy, a rebalancing of our travel system is needed. Some key messages when developing a healthy local transport strategy include, and I think this will be of special interest to business people in the hall, rising levels of asthma are in due part to traffic pollution, and obesity is due to non-active forms of transport. Physical inactivity directly contributes to 1 in 6 deaths in the UK and costs £7.4 billion a year for business and the wider society. A growth in road transport has been a major factor in reducing levels of physical activity and increasing obesity. Building, walking or cycling into daily routines are the most effective ways to increase physical activity. Short car trips, which we've been hearing about quite a lot this afternoon, under 5 miles are a prime area for switching to active travel and to public transport. Finally, they recommend that health-promoting transport systems are pro-business and support economic prosperity. They enable optimal travel to work with less congestion, collisions, pollution, and they support a healthy workforce.
Thank you, Chairman. I just need a minute. I think there's a bit of a sense out here that an assumption was made by the applicant at the start of this process that they didn't really need to put much work into this application, that they didn't need to do things.
Carry on, sorry, no problem.
Thank you. That they didn't need to do things by the book because when it came to planning committee, it would simply be rubber stamped. The consequence of this is that we have a sloppy, incoherent, unacceptably poor quality application that fails on every planning criterion we can think of. The economic case is threadbare and not made out. The environmental impact assessment is inadequate, misleading, and as Councillor Norman tried to say earlier, actually incomplete. The transport case would be risible if it were not so depressingly bad. And I won't even start on the consultation and the contempt that that implies for the people directly affected by this scheme. To conclude, Chairman, if members of this committee want to go home this afternoon with any credibility whatever, they must refuse this application this afternoon, or at least refer it back to the applicant with a request that they go away and do things properly. And if that doesn't happen, then we as interested parties will do everything possible to ensure that this application is called in. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Just those who will go back and sit down and the other ones can stay and we'll move along. Let's have a look what we've got left. See where we are. I think the next person is Mr. Elliott, who is a local resident on this end. Mr. Elliott, when you're ready.
The County Council has ignored its own stated aim to protect ancient woodland. In July 2014, Parsons Brinckerhoff correctly stated that national policy now considers ancient woodland as an irreplaceable habitat, which is unlikely to be fully mitigated. Instead of following its own guidelines, the Council ignored this and proposed a route that cuts through the middle of Grafton Wood and slices off the side of unnamed Wood 2, when alternatives were possible. The County Council made and continues to make decisions based upon an incomplete and inaccurate Parsons Brinckerhoff Ancient Woodland Flora Report. Parsons Brinckerhoff states that ancient woodland surveys should be spread throughout the year in order to identify AWI species which flower in different seasons. The best time to identify woodland plants is spring and early summer, but their survey only took place on the 18th and 19th of September. No attempt has been made since then by them to survey woodland flora at the most appropriate time of year for AWI indicators. The County Council and public have been led to believe that Grafton Wood is inferior woodland. The survey of 2014 states, ecologically speaking, the data collected as part of this study do not support the hypothesis that Grafton Wood is ancient woodland, as there are few AWIS or woodland plants in general. This was totally fallacious. In 2015, 17 species of plants that were not mentioned were verified by Hereford Nature Trust and include the bluebell, which is a protected species. This year, the rare Aniston fern and 3 species of orchid have been found. The botanical recorder for Herefordshire has identified a significant population of marsh helleborine orchids. He states, we have just 6 post-2000 sightings for Epipetis velasquez in Herefordshire and only 12 since the 19th century. Grafton Wood is of significant conservation value and should be considered for SSI status. 6 senior Parsons Brinkerhoff ecologists wrote a report that was so wrong they couldn't even identify a bluebell, let alone a rare orchid. My conclusion is that Grafton Wood is ancient woodland of high ecological value, having been generated several times, even when corrected. A tiny fragment of the large Royal Haworth forest. It needs to be investigated properly. If Parsons and Brinkerhoff had done their job, this would have been known a lot earlier and a considerable amount of time and money saved. You can't reproduce or replicate what has taken centuries to establish. SC2 must be rejected and the planning committee given access to proper facts. If Parsons Brinkerhoff...
I'm afraid that's your wrong.
So wrong, you mentioned
Thank you.
other areas.
Thank you very much. Mr. Thompson, please. Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
I'm David Thompson, agricultural chartered surveyor, consultant to Southern Thompson's. My clients are Mrs. Watkins and family of Hereford. My clients are not objecting to the road in principle if it has to come. Since the Green Road proposal from Port Bay in 1987, which I know could have avoided their farm, Grafton Wood and other heritage assets, it's been hanging over them and they've received no consultation as a major landowner. Wollinghope Court, following the 2005 CPO Omnibus Relief Road, lost 17.44 acres for road and linear mitigation. I know this with other latter land has not been maintained by the council. It now comprises a 300-acre Grade 2 intensive arable farm unit on deep, well-drained, rock-yard series soils, farmed by the Watkins family on a rotation of cereals, grape and potatoes, and maintaining ecological areas for flora and fauna. Situated at the important southern rural approach to the city, it lies in undulating, high landscape value and heritage asset-rich area of South Herefordshire. The proposal at the eastern end adjoining the A49 requires a further 15 acres to be taken from this farm, or 5% of the freehold property, and the resultant loss of livelihood on which they depend, and for which no compensation will ever address. The Council's report before you contains ours and others' objections to the scheme, also confirms by Natural England that 77.64 acres of Grade 2 land is required for road and mitigation purposes and is a major advance, and should, per National Planning Framework 112, be protected at all times. My clients were shocked to learn the design outside the SLR proposed a construction compound and permanent mitigation area on their farm, on the basis it was a mere remnant of the larger field. It is in fact 15% of 55 acres. Sited too conveniently at this eastern end of the A49, this area extends to some 8.5 acres of high quality arable land, which after the construction phase is proposed to be planted with trees. I know the major water easement passes through here which will restrict activity. My clients reject the Council's argument that this is the right place to solve their environmental problems. They should seek to use areas of poorer land quality for mitigation where possible, if this route is to be accepted. We suggest that they could consider the scrub woodland and pasture adjoining Grafton Wood and the Grafton Inn. This was 15 acres available. It would provide immediate economic and ecological benefits, not time delay, with no major loss of grade 2 land, and or but not ideal practice to spread along the mitigation route. If the site compound has to be there, a temporary arrangement with full restoration could follow back to agriculture. The total SLR requires 20 hectares to be taken. There has been no detailed environmental impact assessment made on the impact and viability it will have on the farms and lands affected. Therefore, I suggest no plan permission should be determined until then. There is no economic benefit to our clients. They're trying to run a family farm. They'll lose a further 15 acres of grade 2 land which is required for the nation for food production. We all have a duty to protect and preserve this land for future generations. I invite you to reject the proposal as submitted.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Come to our last speaker in this section, Mrs. Harris, the local resident. Mrs. Harris, please.
Thank you, Chair. I live in Highwood, which is property significantly affected by the Hilton Link as it goes straight through my back garden. I strongly object to the proposals and in particular to the inclusion of the Hilton Link. I retained consultants to review the traffic report submitted with the application and they highlighted a number of significant issues and prepared technical notes which have been submitted to the Council. Extracts from these are included on pages 159 to 161 of the committee report and I request that you consider these fully before reaching any decision. The initial proposals did not include the Keyhonga Link. The Council said that the Keyhonga Link was added later as a direct result of consultation with local councillors and the public. In other words, the link was not seen as a fundamental element of the wider SLR scheme that was added as an afterthought. It is clear from the extensive objections to the application that the link is no longer favoured by the local parish council and local residents and therefore, presumably, it can be taken out of the proposals in the same casual way that it was included in the first place. The council has not proven the need for the Keyhonga Link through any of its traffic modelling. This can only be done by assessing the traffic implications of the SLR on a with and without Keyhonga Link basis. This additional modelling has not been undertaken despite numerous requests. The Council's position is that the current proposal works in traffic terms and that the overall scheme represents good value for money. However, this does not mean that it would not work in traffic terms or that even better value for money could not be achieved without the Keyhonga Link. The Council cannot say otherwise and therefore has not proven the need for the link. The Council has recently adopted the next local transport plan, which includes Western Leaf Road. Whilst I am not in favour of this road, if it does come to pass, major costly modifications would need to be made to the currently planned roundabout to accommodate a fifth arm. These additional costs could be avoided if the Keyhonga Link were to be removed from the current proposals. I do not consider the Keyhonga Link is necessary, but if you believe otherwise, its alignment should be adjusted to avoid my property. The Council's consultants have confirmed that the alignment could be adjusted to avoid the Parkway's land. However, they have chosen not to do this despite the considerable visual, noise and air quality impacts the current alignment has on my property. If you are minded to approve the application, I request that this realignment forms part of the decision. In summary, the proposals will have a significant detrimental impact on my property, and given that the Council has in no way proven the need for the Keyhonga Link, I strongly request that the application be refused.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Thank you. Good afternoon, seats now then, we'll